Picture this, a king who ruled not just with an iron fist, but with a truly peculiar behavior that left his kingdom in awe and often in chaos. This was Christian VII of Denmark, a monarch who defied every expectation of royal decorum. Born to the throne, young Christian was thrust into the limelight, but his reign was far from the usual tale of opulence and order. Instead, his rule was marked by an enduring eccentricity that baffled his court and his subjects alike. From his unusual habits to his erratic decisions, Christian VII's reign was a roller coaster of uncertainty, teetering on the brink of absurdity. Yet beneath the surface of this unusual monarch was a complex and troubled individual, whose story is as fascinating as it is perplexing. Prepare to dive into the life of a monarch whose reign was anything but ordinary. Born into royalty on January 29, 1749, Christian VII was not always destined for the throne. His early life was filled with the luxuries and privileges that came with his royal lineage. Yet, beneath the surface of this privileged upbringing, a different story was unfolding. Christian grew up in a turbulent household, scarred by the bitter quarrels of his parents. Despite the turmoil, his early education was comprehensive, including languages, philosophy, and the arts, grooming him for a life of regality. However, fate had other plans. The unexpected death of his half-brother Frederick thrust Christian into the spotlight. Suddenly, he was the heir apparent, the future king of Denmark. The kingdom held its breath as this unprepared boy was ushered onto the grand stage of monarchy. And so a young, unprepared Christian VII took the throne, with a kingdom watching his every move. As Christian VII settled into his role, his peculiar habits began to unfold. Christian VII was not your average monarch. He was a character that could be plucked straight from the pages of a vividly imaginative novel. His behaviors, often described as erratic or unorthodox, were a far cry from the decorum usually associated with royalty. Now let's delve into the heart of the matter. One of Christian VII's most notorious habits was his penchant for self-pleasure. Yes, you heard it right. Christian VII was known, rather unflatteringly, as the masturbating monarch. This was not a behind-closed-doors affair. He made no secret of his habit, often indulging in public, much to the shock and scandal of his courtiers and the public. This behavior, while certainly unusual, was symptomatic of a deeper issue. King Christian was thought to have suffered from a mental illness, possibly schizophrenia. His erratic behavior, which included bouts of violence, restlessness, and paranoia, were indicative of this. His peculiar habits didn't stop at self-pleasure. Christian would often leapfrog over courtiers in the middle of formal proceedings, throw food at his guests during royal banquets, and enjoyed playing pranks such as pretending to be dead. These eccentricities, while initially amusing, began to wear thin on those around him. The impact of Christian VII's behavior was far-reaching. The court, once a place of refined etiquette, was thrown into disarray. Courtiers were constantly on edge, never knowing what the unpredictable monarch would do next. Public opinion, too, began to waver. The people of Denmark, initially enamored with their young, vivacious king, started to question his ability to rule. His eccentricities, as fascinating as they were, began to cast a shadow over his reign. The masturbating monarch, once a term of amusement, gradually became a symbol of a kingdom in turmoil. But as we'll see, this was just the beginning of Christian VII's unorthodox reign. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the bizarre world of this unforgettable monarch. Christian VII's court was a melting pot of intrigue, power plays, and, of course, his peculiarities. The king's court was a circus of characters, each playing their part in the grand spectacle of his reign. Key figures such as Johann Friedrich Struensee, the king's personal physician and de facto ruler, and Queen Caroline Mathilde, Christian's wife, were deeply entwined in the web of courtly drama. Struensee, a man of Enlightenment ideals, wielded significant influence over the monarch, steering political decisions and even having an affair with the queen. On the other side, Caroline Mathilde, a young English princess, found herself in a foreign land with a husband more interested in his personal pleasures than ruling a kingdom. These relationships, coupled with Christian VII's erratic behavior, created a court environment that was anything but conventional. The court, much like the king, was a spectacle of the unusual and the extraordinary. With a king as unusual as Christian VII, his reign was bound to be unconventional. In fact, his rule was as much a spectacle as the man himself. The court of Christian VII was a revolving door of ministers, each attempting to manage the unpredictable monarch and his kingdom. But how could they possibly keep up with a king who was as unpredictable as the wind? His policies were as erratic as his behavior. One day, he would sign off on a new tax law. The next, he'd be more interested in the color of the palace drapes. This unpredictable nature extended to his decision-making process. Often, his choices seemed to be driven more by whim than by strategy or the welfare of his subjects. This led to a series of policies that were, to put it mildly, unconventional. Consider the case of his most trusted advisor, Johann Friedrich Struensee, a man who seized the opportunity to steer the ship of state, while the captain was preoccupied. Struensee was a proponent of the Enlightenment, and under his influence, Christian VII implemented a series of liberal reforms. These included abolishing censorship, eliminating torture, and even attempting to end serfdom. But, as you can imagine, these progressive changes were met with resistance from the conservative nobility. The social consequences of Christian VII's reign were equally complex. His erratic behavior both fascinated and horrified the public. On one hand, his eccentricities made him a figure of intrigue. On the other, his unpredictable nature led to a sense of instability that permeated Danish society. This was a king who could make a joke one minute and issue a decree the next. The people of Denmark were kept on their toes, unsure what their king would do next. Yet despite the chaos, or perhaps because of it, Christian VII's reign was anything but forgettable. His whimsical rule, peppered with moments of enlightenment, left a lasting impression on the kingdom. Christian VII's reign, marked by his peculiarities, left an indelible mark on Denmark. Despite his eccentricities, or perhaps because of them, Christian VII had a colorful personal life. His marriage in 1765 to his first cousin, 15-year-old Princess Caroline Matilda of Great Britain, a young and naive woman, was as tumultuous as you'd expect. The king's erratic behavior and frequent bouts of self-pleasure did little to foster a happy union. The marriage was unhappy, and after his marriage, the king abandoned himself to the worst excesses, especially sexual promiscuity. In 1767, he entered into a relationship with the courtesan Stovlet Catherine. He ultimately sank into a condition of mental stupor. Symptoms during this time included paranoia, self-mutilation, and hallucinations. Yet it's in the midst of this marital chaos that the intriguing character of Johann Friedrich Struensee, the king's personal physician, emerged. Struensee, a man of Enlightenment ideas, quickly became an influential figure, not just in Christian's personal life, but also in the affairs of the state. As the king's mental health declined, Struensee's influence grew. He even began an affair with the queen, which resulted in a child, and for a time, he effectively ruled Denmark. From 1770 to 1772, Struensee was de facto regent of the country and introduced progressive reforms signed into law by Christian VII. The king divorced Caroline Matilda in 1772 after they had produced two children, the future King Frederick VI and Princess Louise Auguste. Struensee, who had enacted many modernizing and emancipating reforms, was arrested and executed the same year. Christian signed Struensee's arrest and execution warrant under pressure from his stepmother, Queen Juliana Maria, who had led the movement to have the marriage ended. Christian's personal ties were as unconventional as his rule, influencing not just the palace's inner dynamics, but the entire kingdom. His personal life, much like his reign, was a roller coaster of the unprecedented. All reigns must end, and Christian VII's was no exception. As the years advanced, so did the toll of Christian's peculiarities. Christian was only nominally king from 1772 onward. Between 1772 and 1784, Denmark-Norway was ruled by his stepmother, the Queen Dowager Juliane Marie, his half-brother Frederick, and the Danish politician Ove Guldberg. His ability to govern was questioned as his antics escalated and his health deteriorated. The court, once amused, was now filled with trepidation and uncertainty. His decline was not sudden, but a gradual descent into obscurity. The throne, once his playground, was slowly taken over by his advisors and eventually his son Frederick VI. From 1784, his son Frederick VI of Denmark ruled permanently as Prince Regent. This regency was marked by liberal, judicial, and agricultural reforms, but also by disasters of the Theater War, French Revolutionary Wars, and the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars. Also at the same time, the Norwegian separatist movement was on the rise. And just like that, the reign of the masturbating monarch came to an end. The court breathed a sigh of relief, and Denmark moved forward into a new era, leaving behind the bizarre reign of its most peculiar king. Christian died at age 59 of a stroke on the 13th of March 1808 in Rendsburg, Schleswig. Although there were rumors that the stroke was caused by fright at the sight of Spanish auxiliary troops, which he took to be hostile. Christian VII left behind more than just a throne. His reign, characterized by peculiarity, left an indelible mark on the Danish monarchy and its history. His actions, often deemed erratic and unconventional, set a precedent for the acceptance of individuality, even in the highest echelons of power. In the grand tapestry of history, Christian VII stands out as a vivid splash of color. His life, a testament to the human spirit's unpredictability, continues to captivate historians and casual observers alike. The legacy of the masturbating monarch, as he's colloquially known, extends beyond the realm of Denmark, offering a unique glimpse into the complexities of royal life in the 18th century. Christian VII's reign, while tumultuous, also serves as a reminder of the human factor in monarchy, the personal quirks and eccentricities that can shape a nation's destiny. As we look back, we see that Christian VII, a king unlike any other, left a legacy that continues to intrigue and bewilder.